Welcome back everyone, and thank you for joining me again as we dive deep into another unbelievable story from the world of rare coins, a world where ordinary pocket change can unexpectedly transform into legendary treasures. And today's video is going to take you into a mystery that has stunned collectors, shocked experts, and captured the imagination of anyone who ever wondered whether that little copper coin sitting quietly in a drawer might be worth a life-changing fortune. Because today, we're talking about the incredible, almost mythical 1995 1-cent coin rumored to have a staggering value of $53 million thanks to a combination of bizarre minting errors, dramatic production flaws, unexpected anomalies, and all the mysterious circumstances that can elevate a simple 1-cent coin into the kind of numismatic celebrity you only hear about in whispered collector tales. So sit back and get ready, because we're going to explore its story from the intro to the final twist, and by the end you'll understand exactly why people believe that a tiny copper-plated piece of metal from 1995 struck at the Denver Mint could be hiding a value so enormous it almost feels unreal. And yet when you step back and analyze all of the possible errors and mistake types that could theoretically exist on such a coin, and how rare combinations of them could push an already scarce piece into astronomical value territory, it starts becoming clear why certain collectors obsess over the possibility that the perfect storm of mistakes may exist on a surviving example of the 1995's D-cent, starting with the fact that 1995 itself was a year where the United States Mint was transitioning equipment, experimenting with hubbing processes, adjusting die setups, and dealing with known issues relating to die polish, die fatigue, alignment drift, and planchet inconsistencies. And any time a year has multiple overlapping production factors like that, the odds of strange anomalies being created goes up dramatically. So when collectors think about the 1995's D penny, they immediately consider the possibility of double dies, rotated dies, off-metal strikes, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, wrong planchets, transitional errors, misaligned dies, die breaks, die chips, cuds, lamination errors, reading transfer marks, plating bubbles, and the elusive combination errors where two or more rare mistakes appear together on a single coin. And what makes this particular coin so interesting is the long-standing rumor that a single specimen exists containing several stacked errors so extreme that no other known cent quite compares. And even though that rumored specimen has never been fully verified to the public, the story alone has fueled decades of speculation, because the Denver Mint was known in the mid-1990s for occasional quality control hiccups that sometimes allowed dramatic errors to escape into circulation, and collectors often point to known examples from neighboring years as proof that the conditions existed for something truly spectacular to slip through, such as the dramatic 1995 double die for the Philadelphia Mint that became famous and skyrocketed in value, reminding everyone that 1995 was a year capable of producing major error varieties. And when you consider the Denver Mint's unique machinery and unique die wear patterns, it's not impossible to theorize that a Denver version might have been created but never publicly catalogued, especially if struck on the wrong planchet or with mismatched dies, because wrong planchet strikes are among the most valuable errors in all of numismatics, especially when a cent is struck on a dime planchet or a foreign planchet, or even more bizarrely on a transitional metal that was left over from a previous minting experiment. And if such a coin also carried a dramatic double die on the obverse or reverse, plus alignment issues, plus signs of a late-stage die break forming a cud near the rim, you suddenly have a coin combining multiple high-value traits that could theoretically fetch millions at elite auctions. And this imagined combination lies at the heart of the rumor, fueling fascination in the 1995's D-cent and pushing collectors to scour their change looking for something extraordinary. And the stories get even more intense when people recall how certain cents from the 1990s have shown unusual copper plating bubbles that sometimes distort features on the obverse portrait of Lincoln or the reverse memorial design, creating the appearance of raised shapes or odd surface textures that, under rare circumstances, can resemble dramatic minting anomalies. And when those plating distortions occur near the lettering or near Lincoln's bow tie or collar, they can sometimes mimic die chips or die breaks, confusing even experienced collectors and generating excitement that then leads deeper into the search for genuine mint-created errors. And because 1995 D-cents were mass produced, there are plenty of normal examples, but that huge supply paradoxically increases the odds that a few extremely unusual coins could exist, because the more planches and dies involved, the greater the statistical possibility of unpredictable interactions occurring during production, especially as dies wear down, crack, or become polished incorrectly by workers trying to extend their life. Because every time a die is polished, the details weaken, sometimes causing anomalies like missing letters or missing details on Lincoln's coat or hair, and those kinds of dramatic missing detail errors are favorites among collectors. And if a 1995's D cent existed with missing letters plus a double die plus a major off-metal planchette error, that alone could justify a multi-million-dollar valuation in today's high-end auction market, where rarity drives frenzy and combination errors multiply auction value exponentially. And another reason people speculate about a $53 million valuation is the fact that the coin market has seen several headline-making sales where rare coins fetched tens of millions, not because the metal was valuable, but because the coin represented a historic moment, an unmatched era, or a once-in-a-generation oddity. And so when the rumor spread that a 1995 D penny was privately sold, or at least privately valued at an estimate in the tens of millions, the story took on a life of its own, circulating through forums, collector groups, auction speculation communities, and online spaces where stories about rare coins often evolve into half legend and half truth. And although no verified sale has confirmed that number, the story persists partly because of the psychology of collectors who love the idea that within millions of ordinary coins there might be one that stands alone as the king of all errors. And it doesn't end there, because the Denver Mint in 1995 was also dealing with pressures to increase output, which naturally leads to faster machine operation, faster die use, and faster planchette handling. And whenever production increases dramatically, the odds of misfeeds, jams, partial strikes, tilted dies, and off-center strikes rise dramatically. So if one of these off-center strikes also occurred on a foreign planchette, such as a planchette intended for a Mexican or Central American coin which the US Mint occasionally produced under contract agreements, that would immediately catapult the coin into ultra-rare status. And combining that with visible die cracks running across Lincoln's portrait, perhaps crossing the eye or the forehead or descending from the rim in a lightning bolt pattern, would add even more dramatic flair. And collectors absolutely love dramatic flair because it transforms the coin into a piece of visual storytelling that represents not just a flaw but a moment of physical stress inside the machinery of the mint, like capturing the exact second of failure preserved forever in metal. And if that same coin also showed a rotational error in which the reverse was rotated by 20, 40, or 180 degrees relative to the obverse, then the coin becomes unmistakably unique, because rotational errors of extreme angle are very rare for Lincoln cents, especially post-1980, making them highly sought after. And the idea of a coin combining a bold rotated reverse with an off-metal strike and a double die and a visible cut practically guarantees astronomical valuation, especially if authenticated by top-tier grading companies that would encapsulate the coin and label its errors in detail, which significantly boosts the perceived rarity and therefore the overall value. And the legend grows even further when you consider how collectors talk about transitional errors from the early and mid-1990s, including leftover copper planchets from previous years or unexpected zinc planchette anomalies where the plating adheres incorrectly, resulting in peeling lamination errors where layers of metal separate slightly from the surface, because when that happens it creates wild textures, waves, missing plating patches, and metallic sheens that reflect light differently. And such coins become incredibly desirable when a lamination error affects key design elements like the date or mint mark, because a partial lamination peeling over the mint mark can give the illusion of a missing mint mark or a distorted one. And imagine a 1995 D penny where the D mint mark is partially covered by a lamination flap, making it appear oddly shaped, slightly rotated, or partially missing, leading collectors to believe the mint mark itself was struck incorrectly when in reality it's a plating defect. Next! Today we are uncovering the unbelievable story of the 1974 1-cent coin that collectors claim could be worth as much as $16 million because of its fascinating errors, its mysterious production quirks, and the countless possibilities surrounding its creation that have turned it into one of the most talked about pennies in modern numismatics. And as we explore this journey together, we will peel back every layer of what makes this unassuming copper-colored coin so special, diving into the minting inconsistencies, the historical background, the production challenges at the US Mint during the mid-1970s, and the way tiny imperfections can snowball into massive collector demand, pushing this coin into the realm of unbelievable value. So settle in as we unravel why this particular penny, struck during a year of transitions, testing, material experimentation, and mechanical uncertainty, has become a sought-after gem in the eyes of hobbyists, experts, and high-stakes investors who dream of finding the next coin that turns spare change into a multi-million-dollar jackpot. And the story really begins in the complicated climate of 1974, a time when the United States Mint was experimenting heavily with coin compositions due to rising copper prices, creating chaos within production lines, and causing many errors to slip through unnoticed. And one of the most intriguing aspects of the 1974 penny revolves around the fact that while most were made from the classic copper alloy, the Mint also produced a small batch of experimental aluminum pennies, leading to confusion and inconsistency on Mint floors. And though these aluminum cents were never officially released, rumors and documentation show that several slipped into public hands, sparking debates and investigations, and generating an entire wave of fascination around all 1974 pennies, even the copper ones, because collectors began scrutinizing every tiny detail, leading to the discovery of strange die clashes, double dies, off-center strikes, planchette errors, and a variety of striking anomalies that weren't widely recognized until years later. And this opens the door to understanding how a normal-looking 1974 penny could theoretically skyrocket in value to $16 million if it displays the right combination of rare and dramatic errors. And one of the most discussed possibilities is the existence of a dramatic double die obverse where the details of Lincoln's portrait and the inscriptions appear heavily doubled, creating a striking visual effect that collectors adore because doubling represents a mechanical hiccup during the hubbing process when the die receives more than one misaligned impression. And although only a handful of confirmed double dies from the 1970s are ultra-valuable, the mere possibility of one being from 1974 ignites huge interest. And even softer doubling or machine doubling can spark lower-tier fascination, but a true hub double die could fetch astronomical prices because of its scarcity. And then there is the potential for rare off-metal strikes where a 1974 penny might have been accidentally struck on a transitional or leftover planchette from a previous year, something that has happened many times in mint history, like cents struck on dime planches or steel planches or even foreign coin blanks. And if a 1974 cent was struck on aluminum, brass, or even silver-colored materials due to minting confusion that year, such a specimen would command extraordinary value, with auction houses historically pushing off-metal errors into 6- and 7-figure territory depending on condition and authenticity, which only fuels speculation about a hypothetical multi-million-dollar discovery. And moving deeper into the world of mint errors, we must consider the possibility of broad strikes where a coin expands unnaturally due to missing collar pressure during striking, or clipped planches where chunks of the metal blank are missing due to feeding issues, or lamination errors where the surface layer of the metal peels or flakes due to impurities in the planchette. And each one of these errors adds a layer of uniqueness, turning an everyday penny into something that stands apart from the hundreds of millions minted that year. And in some incredibly rare cases, combinations of errors appear on the same coin, such as a double strike coupled with an off-center strike or a dramatic indent paired with a misaligned die. And when two or more rare errors collide, the coin's value can rapidly multiply because the chances of such combinations occurring are astronomically low. And in the context of the 1974 penny, the chaotic and experimental environment of that year increases the probability that unusual mistakes were created, overlooked, and potentially released into circulation, amplifying the mythos around the coin even more. And then we must consider the effect of condition, because the coin's state of preservation dramatically impacts collector desire, and a rare error in heavily circulated condition may still bring significant money, but a mint state or near flawless example could multiply its value exponentially, especially if authenticated by one of the major grading services that encapsulate coins as guaranteed collectibles. And where attention rises, value follows, leading collectors to dream of finding a pristine 1974 penny with a jaw-dropping error hidden in old jars, estate sales, or inherited collections. And another layer to this sensational valuation lies in the psychological and cultural appeal of the penny itself, a coin so small and overlooked that discovering a $1 million version feels like a story pulled from a movie script. and humans love underdog stories and miracles hidden in plain sight, so the legend of the 1974 penny gains momentum because it taps into that treasure hunt spirit we all share, making every slight imperfection seem like a clue to unimaginable fortune. And part of what fuels the $16 million claim is the comparison to other rare cents that have sold for enormous sums, like the 1943 bronze cent or the 1958 double die or the 1969 S double die, each reaching heights previously unthinkable for a 1-cent coin. And whenever a major sale hits the news waves, collectors immediately start revisiting other years, including 1974, wondering what undiscovered rarity remains out there waiting to be found. And this enthusiasm forms a feedback loop where interest fuels value and value fuels more interest, causing even ordinary pennies from notable years to receive magnifying glass level attention, and with 1974 being both a year of massive minting and secret experimentation, the mystery surrounding its production becomes a powerful storytelling tool that helps explain how a coin could conceptually reach a $16 million valuation if the right storm of rarity, condition, demand, and era uniqueness converge, and of course one cannot overlook the influence of collectors who love dramatic narratives, because stories of hidden value, mint secrets, production accidents, and undiscovered treasures always add to the perceived worth of a coin. And when enough people believe in the possibility of a high-value rarity, markets respond accordingly, sometimes pushing speculative prices upward. And within the world of coin collecting, there are always dreamers willing to pay premium amounts just to own a piece of mystery or history, especially when the coin traces its roots to a turbulent production year like 1974, which was filled with unusual decisions, material shortages, and government debates over future minting strategies. And this backdrop helps amplify every potential error discovered, giving weight to even subtle imperfections like die wear, early die state anomalies, ghosting effects behind Lincoln's portrait, and variations in strike sharpness, each interpreted as a possible sign of unusual circumstances that affected production that year. And beyond mechanical errors, we must also consider die varieties where small intentional design changes or unintentional design deterioration leads to minor differences in lettering thickness, spacing irregularities, serif variation, or portrait modifications, and collectors have proven time and again that such variations, when rare, can climb in value extremely quickly. And given the massive number of dies used to strike billions of cents in 1974, the likelihood of unique die varieties having existed is high, though only a handful may have been documented, leaving open the possibility that unknown varieties remain unidentified, perhaps sitting unnoticed in someone's stash. And when discussing a proposed $16 million valuation, we must emphasize that theoretical and speculative scenarios often involve extreme combinations, such as a 1974 experimental off-metal composition paired with a strong double die and preserved in immaculate condition, something so astronomically unlikely that its rarity itself becomes a selling point, and collectors have paid huge sums for similarly improbable finds from other years, so the conceptual reasoning behind this valuation becomes clearer. And as we continue to explore possibilities, it's essential to consider the role of provenance, because a coin tied to a famous discovery, a government inquiry, or a high-profile legal case often sees its value skyrocket simply because collectors attach meaning and story to rarity. And since the 1974 aluminum cents led to government retrieval efforts and controversy, including congressional involvement, collectors naturally wonder whether a related copper cent from the same period that displays suspicious characteristics could carry historic significance. Today we are diving into the fascinating story of the 1981 1-cent coin that collectors speculate could reach an unbelievable price tag of around $29 million because of a combination of remarkable errors, subtle mistakes, unusual production anomalies, and the extremely rare possibilities tied to how this coin was minted. And as we explore this extraordinary penny, we are going to unfold the layers of intrigue, the misunderstood features, and the unique characteristics that make it so desirable in the numismatic world. So settle in, because what might appear to be one of the most common modern pennies actually hides some of the most unusual secrets in coin collecting history as we peel back every detail about how a small minting issue here, a misalignment there, a composition uncertainty, a die deterioration mystery, a double strike theory, and even a possible transitional blend anomaly all come together to create a coin that collectors discuss with fascination and anticipate with intense curiosity. And as we move deeper into this story, imagine a typical 1981 1-cent coin resting in the palm of your hand, copper in color, familiar in size, something you might not look twice at in everyday life. Yet certain examples from this year stand apart because in 1981 the United States Mint was in a unique transitional period, balancing high copper costs, experimenting with zinc-based planchets, and dealing with growing production pressure that led to a variety of unexpected issues. And even though the official transition to fully zinc coins occurred in 1982, the preceding year was filled with test runs, internal evaluation pieces, and error-prone conditions that resulted in a few extremely unusual coins escaping into circulation, each carrying within them the possibility of high value due to mistakes that should never have happened but somehow did. And when collectors talk about the legendary multi-million-dollar 1981 penny, they are usually referring to a hypothetical or undocumented yet theoretically possible specimen that combines several rare traits in one coin, because to reach a value as high as $29 million, a coin must be not only exceptionally rare but historically significant, visibly different from its peers, uniquely flawed, and tied to a minting sequence so improbable that it becomes almost legendary. And in the case of the 1981 1-cent coin, the allure begins with the composition issue, because some collectors believe there may exist extremely scarce experimental coins from late 1981 that were mistakenly struck on early zinc planchets instead of the standard 95% copper alloy, which would create a mysterious transitional error coin, a category already known to bring huge value to collectors since transitional errors reflect the overlap between two different eras of production. And for the 1981 penny, this would mean a coin that technically belongs to the copper era but was struck on a planchet meant for the zinc era, making it a hybrid anomaly of immense importance. And if such a coin exists in pristine condition, its value would skyrocket, because transitional errors are among the most sought-after anomalies in numismatics. However, composition is only part of the story, because the rumored $29 million example would also likely include clear doubling or triple striking marks on Lincoln's portrait, or the lettering such as the date, the word liberty, or the phrase "In God We Trust," and double dies, especially those involving strong, unmistakable separation of the design elements, are some of the most valuable errors in existence, and the thought of combining a transitional metal error with an extremely strong double die error already pushes the boundary of value into astronomical figures. Yet the 1981 penny legend continues with additional rumored anomalies, such as misaligned die strikes where the obverse and reverse are slightly rotated relative to each other, causing the coin to appear tilted or twisted when flipped, and in rare cases severe misalignments can drastically increase value because they create visual oddities that stand out immediately to both new collectors and seasoned experts. And when combined with major doubling and transitional planchet errors, such misalignments create a trifecta of minting mistakes rarely seen together. But it doesn't stop there, because the story of the ultra-valuable 1981 penny also includes speculation about off-center strikes where part of the design is missing entirely from one side, leaving a crescent of blank metal where the die failed to connect properly, and the severity of the off-center strike determines value, since the more dramatic the mistake, the more collectors desire it. And while off-center pennies from various years are common, an off-center strike on a transitional or experimental planchet with doubling layers and misaligned rotations would be the type of error combination that numismatic experts describe as once-in-a-century material. And to elevate this even further, some theories circulate about the existence of 1981 pennies struck with partially filled dies, meaning that dirt, grease, or metal debris clog parts of the design and cause certain letters, facial features, or architectural lines of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse to appear faint, missing, or oddly distorted. And although filled die errors alone aren't typically worth millions, in combination with for rarer errors, they can add an extraordinary extra layer of intrigue and mystery, making the coin even more valuable. And in addition to filled die errors, another category of possible anomalies involves clipped planchets where a small portion of the edge is missing due to mechanical mishandling before striking, giving the coin a concave bite-like shape on one side. And rare clipped planchet errors are valuable, but paired with transitional metal composition and major double die features, they would create the kind of unique collectible that investors would pay huge sums to acquire. But perhaps one of the most captivating theories about a potential $29,001,981 penny is the idea that it could be a mule error, which occurs when a coin is struck using mismatched dies belonging to two different denominations. And meal errors are so rare that only a handful are known in all of US mint history, each worth extraordinary amounts, so the idea that a 1981 penny could have been accidentally struck using a die intended for another denomination such as a dime or nickel adds another layer of magic to the tale, and although there is no confirmed mule penny from 1981 at present, the mere possibility fascinates collectors because the production environment of the early 80s involved high-volume output, experimental planchet assessments and constant die replacements, creating conditions under which such a mistake could theoretically occur. And while all these errors, transitional composition, double dies, misaligned strikes, off-center strikes, filled dies, clipped planchets, and mule possibilities each contribute to the legend of what could make a single 1981 penny worth $29 million, there are also subtle die deterioration effects from the era that add unique features to certain coins, such as die cracks that look like raised lines across the surface or cuds where parts of the die break off, leaving large raised metal blobs on the finished coin, and such dramatic die breaks significantly increase value, especially when they occur in unusual locations like across Lincoln's face, through the date, or near the pillars of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, giving each coin one-of-a-kind visual appeal, and when imagining a perfect storm of errors resulting in a multimillion-dollar value. Picture a coin struck during the chaotic late 1981 period when planchets were being tested, dies were being repeatedly replaced and production speed was prioritized, which could plausibly have caused a coin to be struck in the wrong metal, using a deteriorating or double die, misaligned during striking, partly off-center, and featuring die cracks and filled sections, a combination so improbable that if such a coin were found in pristine condition, untouched and perfectly preserved, the numismatic world would react with shock, excitement and financial frenzy because major auction houses compete intensely for the rarest and most historically significant errors, and investors from around the world would view this coin not just as a collectible piece but as a once-in-a-lifetime artifact representing the unpredictable nature of minting history. And what fuels this excitement even more is that the 1981 penny is a coin people often ignore because it appears so common, meaning that a life-changing treasure could theoretically be hiding inside a jar of old coins, inside a forgotten drawer, or even inside a random handful of loose change, and the idea that a coin from an everyday year could hold unimaginable value only adds to the mystique, inspiring collectors to examine every detail with magnifying lenses, scales, and flashlights as they search for the tiniest hint of a rare mistake, from thickness irregularities to weight deviations to metal coloration changes to unexpected edge shapes. And while the exact $29 million specimen remains a theoretical masterpiece of combined errors, the reason the legend persists is because the minting world has proven time and again that extraordinary mistakes do slip through, and every major rarity, from the 1943 bronze cents to the 1955 double die penny,